Hi guys, welcome to another episode of The Aspiring Entrepreneur. I'm your host Hamza Chowdhury. It's Sunday, February 28th, and today we're going to do a Friday recap on our last week, what we were watching, and then also talk about the markets in general. As always, guys, if you do enjoy this video, I appreciate any of your support. You can just hit the like buttons, find certain subscribers like you to join the channel and hopefully grow our channel. It was a really interesting week. It was very sort of bloody. Last Friday, we actually closed at the S&P here right around I believe it was 389. Yeah. And then, this week we closed at 379, but it was a 10-point drop in the S&P, which is the ETF for the S&P, but it felt like, we dropped hundreds of points, right? It was just, there was a lot of volatility. Apple, Tesla, a lot of the stocks that we cover on this channel dropped a lot. And, right here, kind of closing into Friday, we usually really end the week positive. We don't want people to stress and worry. We always talk about how the markets tend to sort of get bought up. And you can see just massive volume bar, massive drop, right? So we go all the way from 384 all the way down to 379. So we dropped 5 points, guys, in the last 15 minutes. But given that news, on Friday, the House passed a $1.9 trillion bill for stimulus. And I usually, from our experience, we know that the markets like to react to that because that 1.9 is, guess what? Going into people's hands, going to businesses, going back into what? The markets. And so I expect that we're going to see a gap up tomorrow coming into the market. And my hope, what I like to see is, we've had this, we talked about it last week, right? The S&P has gone straight and we've constantly bounced off this 50-day. However, we noted that the anchored VWAP and the 200-day average are locked in here at 343. And that would bring us back here that we tested back here in the end of October. Okay, so we've constantly bounced off this 50, but if we fail and continue to see negative momentum in the market, I can see us personally getting down at risk of 345. However, given the news of the stimulus, I don't think we're going to get there. And I think we'll see a gap up tomorrow. And again, hopefully we get back up here at least to retest the highs, which it looked like we tried to do here. And then we just sold off, right? So we had that massive sell off in the middle of the week. We bought back up and then we just dumped again. So the market's extremely weak, but given the stimulus news, I'm a little more optimistic and hopefully the Senate can do its job and we can get that real quick. So for a lot of us, doing longs, I mentioned to you guys, I'm bag holding a couple stocks, not really excited about it. That's what happens. And you start to get emotional, which I'm not used to being emotional, especially when you're a day trader. You're pretty much in and out of stocks within minutes or if not hours. Okay. So again, starting off with Apple, just kind of going over some recent price action. We have a clear, strong resistance here for the last couple of days at 124. We managed to just constantly get rejected off of that level. And, we broke through that level briefly and then we failed. So the key level here for the resistance for a breakout trade would be over 124. Like I said, I expect the markets to gap up tomorrow. So I wouldn't be surprised if this starts to act like support. And then, of course, a DAP play where you could add some shares would be at the 120 level. We've had that post-market and pre-market the last couple of days. And again, we mentioned that 117.80 has been our strongest support going way back here when we were, we first developed it back in the third quarter last year. 117.80, I never thought we would ever get back there, but we essentially got there, this past week on Tuesday. And so 118 would be my heavy play. And guys, I'm all in Apple. And that's why one of the things I mentioned is make sure you have cash. This isn't a market that you should have, all of your sort of, you should have already bought all these shares and not had any room to add. If you're sort of someone that has, 20, 30% cash in your portfolio, consider adding some of these dip buys because these are incredible steals. To get Apple down here at 121, which was a stock trading at 145 less than a month ago, I mean, that's an absolute steal, right? You're getting a 20% discount at this point. And so we've had this massive drop in the market and it's time to sort of pick up the pieces and make the most of it, right? So as we get constant bounces and we sort of recover, like I said, I expect we're going to gap up and we could easily get back into the 130s on this. And we've had this massive sell off and, look, we're oversold. And when's the last time Apple you ever saw was oversold? Back in, over a year ago. And so the first time you see this in Apple and it's a great time to pick it up. And you've had this long sort of outgoing, negative momentum on the stock, and now you're oversold. So I think it's a great pickup again at 120, definitely heavy at 118, 117. And so I expect to see the markets rebound this week, especially with the stimulus news. And Tesla, no different. Like we identified, 695 as a strongest support, our go heavy. Well, now I'm putting it as a strong resistance because I mentioned that that could be, if we didn't close, which we didn't on Thursday, above 695, that would now be resistance. And guess what? We just for about a minute went over to 706 at open, and then we just failed. And then guess what we did, guys? We tested that as a resistance level and failed, and we just faded off at that level. So 695, again, it's going to be the key resistance level, but because of the fact that I am a little biased on the long side, I can see us validating that as a support and then getting back up here into 740 this week. And then, like I said, definitely testing the 50 resistance, guys. It's not just a one day resistance and it fades. We definitely are going to retest it, and it lines up perfectly with our 775 support, which we mentioned earlier in the week. When up, I think it was this day, we expected that to be the sort of high before we bounce back down. So if there's strong momentum, which I believe there will be in the market, given that we're putting $2 trillion back in, definitely at least expect us to get to the 20-day, and then let's see what happens this week. Okay, so the first resistance level will be the 775, and then depending on how strong the market can come back, we can definitely get back up here into the 830s, which would be awesome. Okay, so again, I'm actually back holding some Tesla myself, had plenty of chances to get out back here and just decided not to, and obviously, part of me does regret it. Palantir, same thing. I mentioned to you guys, I was solid green on this trade, and then I didn't sell a lot of my shares, and now I've been sort of back holding. I think most people are. At this point, if you're at 23.90, you're probably back holding Palantir unless you just bought on Friday. And so Palantir is our favorite stock, guys. We just, what's really bad, and I've been very long on the stock, but let's just have an honest conversation. It looks really bad that the founders, the executives, they sold as much as they sold. And you can argue and say, well, look, the company, was founded in 2003. They've been a part of it for many years. They're still a part of it. But it's like, doesn't it sound kind of bad that the moment you get a chance to sell your shares, you just flood the market with the shares? You don't wait for it to rebound, right? We talked about last week how the algos weren't going to let the massive amount of shares be sold at like 35, 40, right? The price was already coming back down into the 20s. But as a founder, it just seems like you'd want to hold, right? You believe in your product. You maybe sell just like a small size, but it just seemed like the amount of shares that got flooded on the market, which, a lot of these guys, they have millions of shares. It was just kind of weird that the moment that they could have done it, they did. And as opposed to like, well, no, we think that it's undervalued. We're going to wait. And again, if you're short biased, you're going to say, well, I think Palantir was overvalued. I'm long biased, and so I think that it just looked bad for the company, and it would just been nice, considering all factors, in mind, that the founders would at least waited some time to sort of slowly release. Like, for example, waiting for a news catalyst to come out, right? How many times do we know about Moderna would release news, and then what did they do? They would sell shares, and they would call them pre-planned shares. But what we talked about was what? The news is pre-planned, right? We released the news when we know that their sort of rotation on the shares that they're going to release are coming out. We're like, oh, well, we're going to announce something. And then when they do, we're like, oh, but it was already pre-planned. So it's a game that they play that we figured out, and we know what they're doing. But for Palantir, I was just a little surprised considering how low it was that the founders, a lot of these guys were just releasing. And it wasn't a small size. I thought it was a decent size. It was, 21, 30 million worth of shares. So I don't think it looks good for the stock, but I did see this sort of gap up towards the end of pre-market on Friday. So we got up to 24.50. And so where are these people, what are they doing? They're dip buying and they're selling at the pops. And so what we want to see is a hold above this fast moving average. And it's been downtrending, and we had some rebound and we failed. And so again, with the gap up, I expect us right here clearly to get back up. And what I would call what was our dip heavy, I could see us definitely testing 27.50 as an upward resistance, as we did on Wednesday. It wasn't that long ago, but the market just continued to sell off. And you can see that Palantir for the first time really since the start it started trading. I mean, we're getting right down here, guys, at under 40, right? Under 40 for our RSI. So, to me, that when you get this low and you have all this negative momentum, right? I mean, that is a good dip buy. You're on this lower Bollinger Band. All of these things start to add up. You're trading below the 50, right? These are all things to show you that this is clearly a bearish play. But as a long-term trader, as long bullish on Palantir, it's definitely a great time to buy. And just a really surprised just at the price action. Like I said, had I known that we would even come down this low, even close, I would have definitely sold my shares and rebought. I mean, this is literally, guys, this is like, I would consider putting a significant amount of my portfolio personally, and not advising any of you guys to do that, but me personally at this price for a stock that was trading up and upwards to $40 only a few weeks ago, it's an absolute steal for the long term. Okay, and again, this video is purely for educational and entertainment purposes only, so please don't follow anything I do when you're considering trading. This is just to help anyone who wants to talk about some ideas that I may have. And Bitcoin in general, we know that it was on the bullish part of the Bollinger Band, and recently it's just sort of faded off. And I still see some downside risk. I could see sort of what was past resistance and levels that we passed, and we could see this massive volume day, similar to what Palantir did when it broke up before demo day. I see this as a key level here, which just happens to be right around the 50. So I can see Bitcoin risking down to the 40,000. But like I said, with all of these companies sort of joining the Bitcoin movement, Square, PayPal, Tesla's invested, I mean, all the big cats, I wouldn't be worried about it. I could just see this being as a good dip play. So I would definitely be buying up or starting to buy a Bitcoin probably in the high 30s. And then, like I said, I could definitely see the upward trajectory. But I mean, this thing's just been, on the bullish momentum. I mean, guys, keep in mind, at the end of last year, we were trading at 25,000 and we went up to 60. So we over doubled. Okay. And that's why Mara and a lot of these stocks, right, they're going up, and they're going up crazy. And so we mentioned, right, that now that we were getting rejected by the 20-day, we're on the bearish side. We have that again, right? We have that by looking at the momentum, right? And again, we can also see that, with the negative momentum, that we're also we're coming down on the RSI. So once we get down here closer to 40, and I could see that as we get to 50, this is my go heavy zone at 2176 for Mara, which, guys, just keep in mind, it was literally 2176 right back here. Okay, so this key level and key support level 2176 was just traded the 5th of February, right, earlier this month. So it's not unlikely that we're going to get back to that level as Bitcoin sort of cools off. Okay, so give it some time, and I expect it to be back up. And same thing with Riot. I mean, they're really identical plays. I personally like to trade Mara personally, but I mentioned just really pumps, and then we're waiting for that day where it just fades off and it fails. Okay, so this was the day, then it gets pumped up, it doesn't hold, and it fails right here. Okay, so this level was a key level for resistance at 60. And same thing, I expect us to sort of sell off and trade under the 20-day, which is right where we closed on Friday, and get back right here. Okay, so getting to the 50-day and risking down to 24, which is my go heavy zone for Riot, which again, guys, back here 5th of February. So it wasn't that long ago. So don't think, well, how does a stock that was $80 go back down to 20? Well, it just did that 3 weeks ago. Okay, and I think someone had mentioned about Tilray. They were asking, and they were bullish on it. I said, guys, like, Tilray was, I was like, $19 on earlier this month, because someone was like, well, it's $70, or what, up to a high of 67, it got squeezed. And so this was this is the day that was obviously shorts controlled it, and it was just like, guys, this going back into the high teens is not unlikely, considering it was just there. And so this day here, you can see the low was $21. So I guarantee you there's a lot of back holders in this stock. But it's just something that, unfortunately, it was just another squeeze. Let's see. So with that said, guys, I messed up my chart here. Let me see here. So Riot, so again, key level here would basically be dab play at $40, which we got a bounce on Friday, which was a dab play level that we talk about. You just buy light shares, and you could have sold that for 7-8 points. So that was a good level that we identified. But I mentioned my go heavy is down here, which I know is there's other levels you could identify, but I'm talking about like where I would go with significant size, not just going in with like 100 or 200 shares. Maybe something you'd go in with full size. Okay, CCIV, it was nice to kind of see it the last few days kind of find a bottom. It really tanked. We talked about a lot of people, I mentioned last Sunday, was we're going to be on the wrong side of the trade. Why not catch them? And that's what we did. So I was short biased the day the news came out pre-market, and then it came out, and it was more or less holding that $60 level. But once we sort of got the news, that's when we started to see it actually tank. And so it came out here, and I was short biased. Like I mentioned, I'm still working on trying to get more meat on the bone and staying in the trade. And then we just sold off, and I mentioned that 35 was the key level, which we closed above, but we failed. And so this base level, which I mentioned was a good DAP play, ended up coming into play multiple times in the week. So we got that on Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. So we've constantly bounced off that level. So 2750 continues to hold as a key level for us to get involved with CCIV. But guys, same thing is where was the stock before it started to sort of go vertical? And it was right here, right? It was back here in the 20s. Okay. And when the first news first came out was back here early January, right? It was trading in the teens. And so it slowly kind of came up, and then it went really, as we got closer to the news, obviously people knew stuff. And then of course, as people got involved, because a lot of people follow the sheep, follow the herd, what do? They get stuck, and then it sells off. Okay. So this was clearly a short play. Always think in simple terms. Do the opposite of what you think everyone else is doing in simple terms. And I'm being very honest, right? So if everyone, is going long, then think about going short. Okay. And so that's exactly what happened. So same thing. I can see us risking down here to the 50-day, and it's possibly at the lower band. I don't see us going down to 15. So I'm just going to stick with my, sort of 23, 25, 2350 to the 2750 level. I wouldn't risk anything lower. And again, if you're getting Lucid Motors at under 23, guys, I've seen the store. I've seen their cars that they're coming out. This isn't a concept that is 5 years out. This is a concept that's starting to sell cars most likely this year and next year. So you're going to start seeing revenues come in, pretty much right away. So it's not a futuristic idea. It's an idea coming up real quick. But again, if you're bouncing off this 2750, guys, I'm a buyer, right? So I'm dab playing this play. I do want to follow up with Dash, as I promised you guys. I mentioned that there is a pattern I've been studying on selling off the news and recovering, kind of like QCOM. And then of course that what they do is they gap up the next morning. And so I mentioned here on Thursday after hours that they would gap up on Friday, which they did. What was interesting though was right here, is we're looking for a level that's constantly failing. And so you could argue this level here at $151 was failing, right? So it was tested here, was tested here, was tested here. And so you could say, well, I would start to short. And you're right. There's nothing wrong with that. But there's two things that happened. One, when we retested here, that theory failed. Okay. So that whole theory of it fades and fails, that's the level you want to short, failed here. So you would have, cut your losses and broke even. But most importantly, what I wanted to note was this right here, guys. I took this level 2 right before open on Friday. And I wanted to share this with you guys because guess what? This is the volume going into open on DoorDash. We've traded 171,000 shares. So unlike Palantir or QCOM or all these stocks that trade potentially up to millions of shares or, like hundreds of thousands of shares, the volume going into open for DoorDash was 171,000. What does that basically mean? It means that you can highly manipulate the stock that's not highly liquidable, right? So if it's not trading a lot of shares, it's very easy to just kind of, here, and then it goes here, and then the stock goes here, and the spread's like $2, $3. So the moment this happened, right, where the sort of failure, where it constantly failed, broke, that's when the short play was off, guys. And so hopefully you guys caught that and you saw that it essentially recovered and closed the gap, right? So where it closed Friday and where it closed, Thursday and where it closed Friday, essentially closed that gap. And it was just obviously upwards. And so it was good to see. And it looks like, it traded right under the 50-day on Friday. So with that said, guys, let's look forward to this week and let's see what the stimulus does. I expect that the markets will gap up tomorrow and we should hopefully see a green week. After the last 2 weeks, the bears have definitely been in control. As always, guys, if you do like this video, please do hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We're a 100% free content channel. And as always, guys, I'll follow up with you this week with recaps. All right, guys, take care and have a good night. Bye-bye.